Welcome to Impact the World, the show for and about creatives, changemakers, and entrepreneurs. This is a conversation episode where a special guest shares with me what they are creating and the behind-the-scenes journey of their experience. Welcome to Impact the World, and my guest for this week's show is Matt Kahn. Matt is a highly attuned empathic seer and speaker, and he is the author of 3 best-selling books. And I've seen and known of Matt's work out there for many, many years, and we recently got connected by a mutual friend. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to get to meet him and to really get to understand a little bit about what has driven his path of doing this work in the world. So we have a good conversation going all around the areas of Matt's work, and we seem to wind up at the very end of the show having quite an obsessive conversation about food and cooking. So I hope you enjoy the show with Matt Kahn. You can learn more about Matt's work by visiting his website, mattkahn.org. As ever, we put all of our links in the show notes, so check them out. And if you enjoy this show and you want to support us, the best way you can do that is to go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the show there, and leave us a rating and a review. That's how you'll help more people find this show, which we are passionate about producing and bringing to the world. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy this episode with our guest, Matt Kahn. Welcome, Matt, to Impact the World. I was just saying to you, it's been so long that we have been in and around each other's orbit, doing similar work in the same field and many mutual friends. So it's really fantastic to get to meet you today in person for the first time.
Oh, thanks so much. I've been looking forward to meeting you for many years, and we've been orbiting each other's fields, and finally the inevitable encounter has happened. So it's truly equally an honor for me to be here with you.
It's funny because I remember it was probably 2008, maybe 2009, when I think I first became aware of you, unless it was a little later that you started. But one of the things that hit me when I was tuning in on some of your videos this morning in prep to speak to you today is, whether you frame it this way or not, I'm not sure, but it's really channeled what you do. So my experience of watching you on camera is, he's channeling this transmission, he's channeling this topic. Yeah. And I was curious, for my own interest, how your experience of these messages that you bring out to so many people around the world, mostly through video, how they come through you and how you experience it.
It's a real interesting story, just because I've learned as I've gone along. So when I started doing the work I was compelled to do, which, I never sought out to do the spiritual work because I didn't even know it existed. I was a performer my whole life since I was 10. And looking back, everything I've done has prepared me for what I do. But I was always very spiritually oriented, and I was very much the most comfortable and at home on stage. And when I started doing what I was doing, which was just being compelled by spirit to tell someone something, and then I would get in front of audiences and could do the same thing, like a reading with an entire group as one group soul. People would say, "Oh, you're a channel," and I would look into channeling, going, "I guess I'm a channel." And I kind of just learned as I went along. I would see people doing trance channeling, which, if that's the gift inside of you, that's wonderful. For me, I've always watched myself and what I do, and my form of channeling is more of what I would call an embodied channel, where spirit is not sliding my personality aside and bringing through something else. It's actually coming through the embodiment of my personality. So when I'm on stage and I'm channeling a teaching, and then in that split second, the universe wants to stop and help people integrate, and then I'll do a joke. But it's not Matt Kahn really wants to tell a joke. It's spirit is creating a joke to foster a moment of integration for whatever clearing and activation has just happened. And over the years, I've just began to realize that when I speak, there's an energy that comes through me. When I write, there's an encodement of energy. And I've really just learned as I've gone along. And I've just learned by watching myself and watching my interactions with people and just kind of going, okay, I'm a channel, but this is a different kind of channeling, and just kind of going with it, and just, from the intention of really wanting to serve people and loving watching people heal and wanting people to have the most incredible experiences in the most immediate amount of time. And so really, this is all just fulfilling my love of service.
So what was the stage side for you when you were younger? Because you said that you kind of grew up on stage. What were you doing?
My goodness. So when I was 10 years old and I had this pull to perform, and I told my parents, they took me to a local community theater and I auditioned for a Ray Bradbury play. And I never done an audition, didn't know what to do. They just said, do this, do that. And I booked the lead role. And so now I'm the lead in the play. I have no idea what acting is. I'm just doing what people tell me to do. Stand here, do this. And then from there, I was in a singing and dancing group of all things. I used to be if I say this, people are going to laugh because they wouldn't expect. I used to be a hip hop dancer when I was a kid.
Oh, that's great.
And so, when it was Hammer time.
That's great.
When
you
we
need
were
to
growing
incorporate that, Matt, I think. You need to bring that back into some of these videos.
The next book launch is going to be Hammer time. And so I was staying at my friend's house and he was in this jazz and singing group. And I said, I don't know jazz. I'm a hip hop dancer. He says, just go to the audition, stand in line and just copy what you see. And I did. And I got into the group. And for 5 years, I had 2 hours of vocal training and 2 hours of dance training twice a week. And I'd perform with this group at Disneyland. 4 hours a week for me to realize I'm not a singer.
Right.
I'm not fighting for solos, but I was a really good dancer and performer. And I got to perform in the Super Bowl halftime show with Michael Jackson, which was a rather life-changing experience. I mean, he was one of my idols growing up. So, and when I was in front of like 300,000 people, it was probably the most comfortable I've ever been in my life. And so it gave me this feeling of performing is my home. And so I was an actor. Improv was where I excelled because I'm a channel, which I didn't know at the time. And I did a couple commercials and got out of acting. And then when the spiritual stuff really started like activating, I was able to look back and go, oh, the performance was just getting me comfortable in front of people. And I just didn't realize it was building for something else. And I started, giving readings. And well, the first thing that actually happened was I would go to the grocery store and Spirit would tell me to tell people things like, tell this person their deceased grandmother says blah, blah, blah. And they'd have this huge breakthrough. And I had no idea what I was doing, but it felt good to just serve people. And if I didn't say what was coming through me, it felt like I was about to have a heart attack.
So when that first happened, what was that like? Yeah. So because this is a random stranger in the grocery store. And
totally random.
When you first hear this voice, like, was there a moment when you're wondering what that is, or?
Well, when I was 8, I had, or 8 or 6 or 8, it's hard for me to remember what age. When I was a kid, I had this out-of-body experience and I went to heaven and I met what I later realized was Jesus. And there was such a love in that experience that I still remember to this day. You carry this feel with you. For anyone that's been touched by the light of heaven, it's a certain vibration of love you can't shake. Like I still carry it like it happened yesterday. And so when my guide started speaking to me, it immediately came with that familiar heavenly vibration. So I immediately knew, trust this. And there was also part of me that was listening to make sure the content was trustworthy and not. Because, in the back of your mind, I think it's really healthy to kind of question things.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right?
I think it's very healthy.
So I wasn't being compelled to tell people ridiculous things. It was just loving, beautiful remembrances. And I'm in, by the oranges saying to someone, look, I know this is going to sound crazy. I have to deliver this message from Spirit or else I'm going to have a heart attack. So you can run away from me, but let me just say this. And then they would have this huge experience. And then my guides told me to go to this local spiritual bookstore and tell them about my experience. And I said, hey, why do I keep seeing purple energy around me? And they said, take our psychic development course. Okay. So I'm in a class of 5 people doing all these exercises. And by the 3rd week, they asked me to teach it. And I thought, I don't know. I'm in your class. And so then they said, sat me down with someone, give a reading. I don't know what a reading is. And then all of a sudden something happened. And I gave a reading. And then I was, booked at a psychic fair to give readings. And every single time I'm like, I don't even know. And boom, it came through. And so within like a month of doing this, I had a full schedule of healing clients and sessions. I was working with people from all walks of life. I met someone who wanted to help promote and partner up and help share my work. And all of a sudden, I'm doing this thing and I really don't even know what I'm doing. And I only know what I'm doing because I've watched what I do and I've observed and I've learned from what people have told me and I've kind of pieced it all together. Just like when I used to do healing sessions one-on-one, I think I've done around, like, honestly, 12,000 healing sessions, which is astonishing. And every healing session, I would listen to what I would say through me and I would listen to what they would say. And that's how I learned about the other spiritual path was by piecing it together for like 12 years. So it's been a rather mysterious journey, but it's been one where I've been educated only by my direct experiences. I don't read a lot. I write, I channel, and I like to keep it pure because I want it to come through me the way it comes through me. And I kind of have this weird, funny rule, like if certain people use words, like Eckhart Tolle uses present moment, I won't use that a lot because that's his. And I want to respect that and just kind of have my own authentic channel. And that's something that I think is just a really key thing to what I want to do, is just always be true to what wants to come through me. And what always wants to come through me is often the most loving things, which I'm grateful for.
I love what you're sharing, particularly about kind of how you got going. And because I definitely resonate with several of those things. Like for me also, nobody trained me. It just happened to me. And for me, the biggest, I think, validation came from me monitoring how people responded to what I was doing.
Exactly.
And what they told me and the consistent messaging that I would get, this is helpful. This has changed my life. This is, so I had to learn it that way. And I think that's one of the things that can stop people using their intuitive or their empathic gifts, because, in our society, in our conditioning, so many of us have waited to be certified or verified, or this person has told you can do something. And it is so mysterious because everyone's gift is unique. And the best experience is kind of getting in there, starting, seeing how it goes, monitoring how it goes, and then letting it ride.
Absolutely. And I think, and I love what you're saying, and I see so many parallels between us. I think what's interesting, I mean, I remember I've been on stage or teaching over the years, and my teachings evolve. Everyone's going to mature and grow. And as you grow as a human being, so is what you offer. And I remember I've been on stage and I've watched myself do a Q&A, like let's say many years ago. I'd have a Q&A and I'd get someone to a certain point, but I'd walk away from that experience going, I don't know that was the best approach I could have taken. They had a great experience, but like playing chess, I go, I don't think I'm going to do that again. And that didn't feel like the way I want to do it from now on. And so, not in a scrutinizing way, but there's no one that has watched me closer than me. And it's a beautiful skill to have when you can be that objective, when just because it comes through me doesn't mean it's instantly like amazing. I go, oh, well, that's a cool teaching, but I think that brought me to a different realization. And I think there's a better way to do it. And what I am proud of in my work, and I'm a spiritual fan. So I love this work. I love your work. I love Eckhart's work. I love great, authentic work, and I really, really just, I love it with all my heart. But what I love more than anything else, and people that have come to me and said, hey, Matt, what should I focus on to bring my gifts to life? They think I'm going to say meditation or all these things. And I said, the most important thing to focus on is how you treat people. And I know, Lee, you have that because I can feel it. And I have that. The most important part of what I do in serving people is how people are treated, how they're seen, how they're felt, how they are held in my presence. Everything else just comes through me. But my focus is, the success is that the people that I serve, whether it's one person or thousands of people, feel seen, respected and honored. And for me, I don't even mind or care how people act towards me, even though people are very nice. My service, my desire is to treat people truly the way they deserve to be treated. And that's for me, the fuel, that's the joy of why I do what I do.
It's very interesting hearing you say, I mean, there's several things that you're saying that are kind of pinging for me as you're saying them, but when I was on your website this morning, you have this this great article about humility. And one of the things that it's something I've spoken to friends and contemporaries about over the years. One of the strangest compliments that I find myself being given in this field, which I think says very little about me and more about the world that we live in, is I always find it kind of sad when people say, "Oh, you're so humble."
Yeah.
Because I don't see that as a compliment to me. I see that as a horror story about, well, what the hell's going on in the world? Because for me personally, I feel I live a life of incredible privilege in that I get to do work that I love and that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And it gets to benefit other people. So for me, well, you should be humble. You should be very grateful. I live my life very grateful for the life I'm in. So it tells me a lot about the kind of spiritual distortion, or I should say power distortions that we see in the world that the spiritual world is not immune from, and the amount of kind of ego power tripping that you can occasionally see in our field or meet in our field, which I think is very disappointing when you first see it. But then you remember, well, it's the planet, so we're gonna see everything, and we're all evolving and we're all doing our best. But I was curious how that fits for you, because it's a theme you just alluded to.
Yeah, it's funny when I was raised by my parents, and I had a wonderful relation with my parents, but my parents also had extraordinary patterning. And boy, my mom and dad, I mean, that was the greatest training I ever had, was, to be honest. I was at the end of their lives, I was both of my parents' spiritual teacher, which happened spontaneously, and helped them leave their bodies. And I've had a wonderful relationship with my parents, as much as there was also at the same time some extraordinarily wounds that had to be healed, just like all of us.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I was taught, no matter how people act, Matt, you have to be nice and polite. And I took it literally. And so I took it completely literally, because I was afraid of my parents, as well as desperate and eager to please them. And so when I would be in experiences where someone, when I was very young, and I get roped into this kind of egoic swirl where someone would treat me not nice, and then it would, here comes sarcasm, and and I would walk away, and I'd have this feeling of, and just in my own consciousness when I was young, you spiritually failed right there. And for me, it was this interest of, how do I act polite without adjusting my values for someone else's choice, whether conscious or unconscious, mostly unconscious. So fast forward to being in this field. I got in this field. I thought I was going to come out and meet all my spiritual buddies. I'd have all my psychic best friends. I've learned only from my own channel. And I came into this field, and it was a rude awakening, because I met a lot of people who were on stage doing work, leading things that I thought, when you do this work, it's because you've done enough work in yourself, and there's something so it was a rude awakening. And I watched some very well-known people on stage answering questions with people at retreats. And I watched the people on stage make the other person's plight more about their performance than serving the person. And it was actually during a retreat where I was asked to be a guest speaker. And I was just kind of, hey, let's see so-and-so in action before I go on there. And it infuriated me, because as an empath, I can feel people's suffering. I take it very seriously. And so to watch someone kind of use someone else's suffering as fuel for their performance, and then when the person didn't have the quite expected breakthrough, they got kind of shut down and gaslighting. And I remember watching a specific example, which, I'm trying to be as general as possible. And it pissed me off so bad. And I don't get angry that often. I really don't. But it lit a fire. And I said, I will never be like that. I will make my strength how I treat people, and I will treat people as the gods that they are, regardless of what they got going on. And it was a promise I made to myself, because if I don't operate the way I do, I can't live with myself doing this work. I don't do this work because I'm really good at it. It's because I love people. I love people. I love helping people, and I will help people until my dying breath. That's why and this is just the way I happen to help people. Or if it's someone in my personal life, I make them a delicious meal, because I also like to cook. But I love people, and I love people who don't particularly love their experiences. I love people whether they love me or not. That's irrelevant to me. So for me, it's just, there's such a love and there's such a commitment without trying, to politeness, to respect. Like if I meet a little boy, I think it's so funny to say sir, or a little girl's ma'am. It just, for me, it feels so good. And because I've always had a general awareness of spirit in everything for me feels so holy and so reverent and so sacred. That's what I'm really responding to, is what's within all of this. And it's so for me, it's been quite an interesting journey. And, I don't know. I do my own thing. I do it the way I do it. It's been working extremely well, and I'm grateful, but there's just, there's only a certain way in which I operate, and I can only be responsible for what I contribute. So,
I mean, it's funny, your story about the people that you met that were on stage, and I mean, literally almost some of the exact same words are things that I also have shared, and kind of one of the hardest things to see. And one of my great barometers, on the rare occasion that, I mean, because I don't know about you, Matt, I have a very quiet life. Like someone said to me the other day, oh, what's it like being so out there on the internet? And I said, I don't know. I'm not looking at myself on the internet. That's not my reality. My reality is creating the next thing. So the only time I'm ever really aware of, let's say, the reach of the work is if I'm at a live event, which of course we haven't really been at for a while. And for me, the barometer is always not how people treat me at those events, but how people treat the people with me. Do they make eye contact with the person at my shoulder, or are they just being very nice to me inappropriately because they're inflating me because of my supposed position in that room? So I'm really sensitive to those dynamics, and it's always very telling to see how, for me with the backstage, it's always how do people treat the people who are helping backstage. Absolutely. Not the other speaker, not the other person that they want to talk to them about their book, but just how the person who brought you a glass of water, because is there an equality there? So it's an interesting distortion. I'm interested how because you just shared how for you the holiness and the reverences and everything. How have you dealt with some of the shadow that we're seeing surfacing in recent years, but especially this year? I think this year we've had the kind of biggest evidence, the biggest, most mass consciousness evidence of some of the shadows on the planet that we're all dealing with and having to go through this transformation around. How do you keep yourself afloat, or what are your remedies if you find that you're getting a little too hit by some of the darkness or the suffering on the planet? Because I know that's a big thing for those of us who are empathic, like figuring that out.
Yeah, no doubt. And just to parallel your life, when I'm not on stage or doing what I do, I live a very quiet life. And I do it because, I'm giving a lot of energy. I'm channeling. I'm healing energy is helping to shift a room of people and people on live stream. And so it takes a lot of energy. And I love being social, but I love the downtime just so I can recharge. And I also think it's a very beautiful practice of humility in terms of, because nowadays I go to the grocery store and I get recognized, not like 100 people, but it's a beautiful thing to be recognized for your work. And I'll stop and give someone a moment of my time, of course. And but I also think it's good for me to have the downtime and to just kind of keep it grounded and just to make sure I'm always connected to myself. In terms of the shadow, which I love what we're talking about, what I've noticed, and this is just something that I've been healing as a core wound since I was a kid, because my mom had a very interesting father. And so she had a lot of wounds. And my mom, when she wanted to get her way, would a lot of times reinvent history and reality to get her. And even when I'd say no, but I remember it this way, I could be accused of lying just to keep her covering her track. So a lot of weird, for me, wounds with the feminine shadow. And so, and I remember like maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was at a retreat and I answering a question with someone, and a woman's feminine shadow came, and it's like she turned into a giant spider. And there was this, and I have, I'm very loving with people. I have a wonderful relationship with my audience. And it was like one of these weird experiences where I thought, is this person going to rush on stage and attack me? Mm-hmm. And I had the thought in my head, if that happens, I'm going to allow them to until someone comes in, because I don't fight. I don't do that. And it was this really weird moment where I froze. And it was the first time in my career of like 14 years where I just froze. And for half a second, I just didn't know what to do, because for that second, I became a little boy. I became a little boy petrified of my mother in front of 500 people. And I, got my composure and it was fine. And, it was okay. But for me, what I notice is that there have been a lot of healing dealing with the feminine shadow and how that brings out this very fragile, frightened part of me. And when I went through awakening many years ago, it was like who I used to be just shot out of my ears and just exploded. And so there was many years where I didn't even have that sense of self. And then as I came back into my body, then I'm revisiting the wounds and experiencing those feelings in 100% awareness and healing those things. So I think for me, it's so important. And I have a small, beautiful group of friends. Most of them, for some reason, live in different states. So I spend a lot of time alone. And I don't say that in a sad way. I say it because it's almost necessary for me. I'm not an antisocial person, but I need the time to integrate my next big upgrade, to process, to reflect, to look at what I just did. And I look at it from 5 different angles and go, is there a better way I could have done that? Is there a more loving way I could have done that? Always just wanting to refine what I do. Because for me, this is like a sport. So I think for me, how I deal with shadow, whether arising as a young part of myself or, in what comes up to be healed in the presence of another, is I spend so much alone time with myself, connecting with myself, being with myself, that it allows me to hold that space and always kind of see where we need to go. Yeah. But on a few occasions, like I said, the feminine shadow has really brought about an unexpected level of terror.
Yeah, no, that makes, I think we all have our thing or things like that we go, oh, this has always been one of my great challenge areas. But it's interesting that you bring up your parents, because I wanted to read something that I got from your website this morning. It's a paragraph from an article that you had, but it really, it conveys a couple of things. To me, this is really about how we grow beyond our conditioning. So you wrote, when I began teaching, long before the era of ties and sweater vests, I bought myself a pair of $49 semi-dressy Skechers shoes that I wore for the next 9 years. Yeah. I used the same laptop for over 11 years and had it rebuilt and upgraded while writing Facebook posts. Even as the popularity of my YouTube videos grew, I was so afraid of everything being taken away. So I just saved my money to match the mentality of my parents. When I was a kid, each and every time my parents were on a financial upswing, some snafu of unexpected cost would bring them back to the same scraping by dogfight they had known too well. As I began succeeding, I recognized layers of imprinting from seeing my parents live out this dynamic. And it made me more afraid of losing what I had than being excited for the blessings I was receiving. Now, the reason I loved this, number one, I think you can focus that on, if you like, the finance aspect. And that's one thing that I think we all go through. But really, to me, this is about anything. You know, you can pick your thing, whether it's you become married and have a happy marriage and no one in your family had a happy marriage. So you're going beyond what you knew. I will also point out that it's not that long ago that having the same pair of shoes for 9 years or a computer for 11 years was kind of considered normal. So we've changed as a world. But I think what hit me about it is just recently, we lost my father this past spring, and Stephen and I are just buying a house, and it's the first time I've ever bought a house or been able to buy a house.
Right.
And I keep feeling like looking over my shoulder for the parents. I'm like, well, who's going to take care of these? Who's going to deal with this call about finance that's beyond my comprehension and understanding? I've noticed this in my work and various areas of my life. There is that moment when we grow beyond our conditioning, our training, and we're kind of without the safety net. But what I've noticed with the people I've worked with on this dynamic who are struggling with it is you do kind of have to push through. You have to recognize it's happening. You have to recognize the temptation to go back into the old habit.
Yeah.
And then you have to push through the discomfort to grow into becoming something new. So I thought you articulated that so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. And again, my sincerest blessings for the passing of your father.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was such interesting. My parents were always you will do better than us. You don't want to know from this. And so it was like, I had to, had to succeed. And when I first became successful in this field, the first thing I did is I paid my parents back every dime they ever, they floated me so much money to attend a college I never finished because that was not for me. So I first thing I did is I paid my parents back everything. And I felt this huge relief of just like clearing a debt. And then, recently I moved into a new home in Central Oregon, and I bought myself a house, and it's a house just for me. And just going through the very strange evolution where I know myself as I am now, but I also know the tendency to see myself as I was when I was really young. And so, and I'm also, because I'm a channel, I walk around with this embodied presence of what I transmit, but I don't walk around with any recollection of nearly anything I've ever written or taught at all. And when people say, remember that thing, that's what reminds me, oh yeah. Or I'll watch a video of mine for half a second and I'm like, I guess I said that. I don't remember where I was. Sounds awesome. And so just kind of walking around with like, I have a career, I'm successful, I've helped a lot of people, and I almost have no recollection of any of it happening. And and I've succeeded, and as I've grown up, how does my definition of success change? Because it's no longer this little boy going, when I have this, I'm gonna buy this, and it quit. And I'm sure that this is, for me, success is now rooted in the company I keep, the people I associate with that feel resonant to me, and the quality of my work. That's all I care about, is the quality of my work. I love my life. At any moment, if the spaceship comes for me, I'm good. Like I'm good. And I always have goals. I'm always working on things. But for me, it's always like you had mentioned earlier, what's the next thing I'm going to create? What's the next level? What's the next edge I'm going to push through in myself? What's the next thing I'm willing to face? And so that for me is the new definition of success. But it was very interesting to come from my family's, hard work ethic, which for them almost became this weird righteous badge of honor. Like I struggle and I earn my way. So therefore I expect to be seen this way, and all these really weird nuanced, levels of conditioning. And it was just a lot to really work through. And I, of course, projected a lot of my experiences with my parents onto the universe. And as much as I've always had a clear connection of a loving universe, for so many years I projected onto the universe, I will follow your instructions because I'm so afraid you're going to take this from me. I'm so afraid of being punished by you. And it wasn't until the last 3 to 5 years where I could say I've really worked it out to a tremendous degree. And it was really quite something for me that I carried.
Awesome. That's great. And it's interesting too, because I was talking to someone about this the other day. Your definition of success changes with every stage you reach.
Yeah.
So at one point for me as a part-time, originally I was a reader, I kind of psychically read for people. And then it became Skype and telephone sessions, like to go full time with that and to be able to afford to go full time with that rather than part time was like, oh my God. And then it was like, oh my God, I've got enough money to go and buy this pair of shoes. Or, that was like there were like these little tick boxes. And then you get to a point where I feel you get to really go deep when the kind of more superficial, and I shouldn't even say superficial because there are real needs that we have to live and survive on this planet. But when they start to get taken care of and you're not having to chase after those things in quite the same way, for me, it was the best moment because suddenly it's like a wake up moment again where you go, oh, now I get to really deepen my purpose because certain things are in place. So now I get to go even deeper. So it's a fascinating ladder, this perceived success, and it's very we're sold such a bill of goods around what success really is, and I love that in our time, our generation, we're not buying that. I think when we were kids we were sold this idea of what success was. Everybody today is going, hang on a second, that's not actually what truly means anything.
Well, yeah, and it just what comes up to me that seems so funny is I remember, if I look at my parents. My parents would work hard. They worked for other people. My mom was a paralegal. My dad was a salesman. My dad was dyslexic and not diagnosed because at his generation, there was no such thing as dyslexia. You were just labeled as stupid or incompetent. So my dad was always trying to prove his father wrong because my dad did not follow his grandfather's footsteps to inherit a hospital and become a doctor or a surgeon. So my dad always had this like fight inside of him. And I remember with my parents, one day I watched them. And just hearing them talk, and I realized, they work hard, they save their money, the American dream, they have a house, this whole thing, all for what? All so that we have the right to rest. And I went, that dream exists in people who don't have a spiritual practice. And they think they're trying to use money to buy themselves the time to care for themselves, right? And that was kind of when my illusion of that started to kind of break apart. What I think is fascinating about, we talk about finances or abundance, is having a lot of money can give people the opportunity, if they're willing, to say, I have so much of my needs met, I now can be authentic to my gifts and to what I really feel is true. People that hit rock bottom and have nothing go through the same process of, I'm forced to only be authentic. And so I think what's interesting is whether you have money or you don't, you're in the same process, the same opportunity, which is whether you have everything or nothing, the opportunity is, will you cross the threshold into true authenticity?
Yeah.
And that's the game, that's the road that you and I are on. That's what we do in our work. And I think at a certain point for every human being, there just becomes this point of awakened consciousness where you can't operate in anything else but authenticity, and no temptation means anything. No amount of money, no amount of opportunity. No, you're going to be on this TV show. And even like, when I was a performer, even opportunities I've had in this field that people would say, "Whoa, that's a tremendous opportunity." It kind of means nothing. And even when you're doing it, right, it feels like nothing. It feels empty. It feels make-believe. It feels like this has no substance or significance whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just been a very deep journey of unraveling my parents' mindset and really, really kind of just, okay, I'm going to bring through what I bring through, and I'm going to serve people. And that's what this is really all about. And even in our industry, where it could be about the perception of mastery depends on certain numbers of popularity and how people see things. And, I'm just very grateful to be very rooted in my own thing. And that's exactly what I honor in you, because I see it and I feel it. And that's why I've always, over the years been like, one of these days, me and Lee are going to meet and we're going to hang out. It's going to be awesome. And because I can feel that. And I just want to say, I really appreciate the work you're doing, the way you're doing it, and the way it flows through you. And every time I see what you do, I just applaud and I go, another one.
Thank you. And it's funny because one of my favorite things that this year, two big things have kind of happened for me around the work. Yeah. Number one is we have been able to create a music album, which will be released in November, probably by the time this show is out. And number two, this show, which is such a delight because, I love these kinds of conversations and I love hearing people's process. But for example, Matt, I now know you were a hip hop dancer. I mean, this is like, I don't know how I would have learned that otherwise, but I think it's those tiny things that are fascinating as much as the big things you're saying. Yeah. Just to kind of loop into what you're saying about success as I was listening to you. Yeah. For me, actually, the one thing that I think I've come to realize is the biggest successes are all tiny. Like it's all tiny moments for me. Yeah. Like, 10 years ago, if you'd have said to me, oh, Lee, you're going to have a book published by New World Library and it's going to be on Amazon and people are going to want it. Like some part of me back then would have been like, oh my God, wow, imagine. Yeah. And actually the truth is seeing my book on Amazon doesn't do anything for me. Right. Hearing someone say, oh my God, I loved your book. It did this for me. I'm like, oh, that touched my heart. That I can get behind. Oh, I'm thrilled. That's great. Yeah. So those tiny moments in work and equally in life, it's the small, it's the small things. And yet so many of us have been asked to be distracted by seemingly big prizes that the way I see it, our society has not been very fair about giving out. It's like the 1%, the 99%. So I'm actually really enjoying seeing all of that break down at this time. Yeah. So to touch on that, Matt, you and I have both been doing this work for a similar amount of time. Yeah. Isn't it fascinating how different the world of spirituality, consciousness is now versus say 2006, 2008, when I was hearing from my own guides, oh, you're going to see spirituality and consciousness enter the mainstream. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounds nice, but I couldn't put that together. I couldn't quite see how it was going to look. And yet here we are in 2020 and you hear certain things said in the popular consciousness as if they're a given that 14 years ago, people would have gone, huh? It's fascinating to me how it's changed things. How have you experienced that kind of quite seismic shift in our culture?
It's interesting because, so if I remember back to when I first started, whether it's 2006, 2007, when I was really starting to, get booked at bookstores and speak in front of an audience. And, back in that day, it's like, oh, if 5 people show up, wouldn't that be cool? And if anyone shows up. And I would sit in front of an audience of people who maybe were interested in the subject matter, didn't know who I was. I'm not sure I knew who I was at that time either. So we're on the same page trying to figure out who I am. Why am I listening to this guy? And I'm saying things that to them seem very counterintuitive to what they've been taught. I'm bringing through things that are kind of not the norm spiritual teaching. And so I'd sit there in front of people going like, I'm not sure. It's this weird thing where it's like, if I say something they've never heard before, they weren't sure whether to embrace it. But then if I said everything they already believed, I'm not saying anything new. So in the very beginning, I wasn't even sure what I was doing or why I was doing it. Like did I help anyone? Was that helpful? Like, I almost wanted to start my talk by saying, hi, I'm Matt Kahn, pleasure to meet you. I just want to apologize in advance for, you know what I mean? I just wanted to kind of.
Oh, I do that, Matt, by the way. I actually do. I'm seriously, it's the first thing I say on stage. I say, who's been dragged here by your friend? And I go, I deeply apologize. And I hope they take you somewhere good after that, so I always think it's a good thing to do. Get out of the way. Just
apologize in advance for the time I'm going to waste of yours. But thank you for listening and making this a lovely moment for me. And as time went on, you start to see things in, at least in the pop culture, you start to see more evolution. You start to see more repressed energy come out to be expressed. So we see a lot of shadow being healed, and we start to see consciousness in the mainstream. And then at the same time, I think what we see a lot of spiritual concepts going into a broad arena, which of course, first the concept goes into the arena and it gets represented in a way where it's not very backed by the deeper authentic work. It's just something to say, something to,
totally,
you know what I mean? Like when you go to a
bumper sticker culture, you know, it's
bumper
like
sticker culture.
I'll say the saying, but I don't really know how to embody it yet.
Yeah, we got the namaste down.
Yeah.
Love and light, right? Yeah. And that whole funny thing. And so for me, I look at it and I go, yeah, it's wonderful to see all of this kind of getting more in the mainstream. But I think what makes our work, and anyone who's doing this work or anyone who's watching this that wants to do the work, which I'm always a fan of, nurturing, the next generation of light workers. I think that's something in my career I really want to focus on, is I want to help the next generation of light workers really step into it. Because I think ultimately, when we start to see spiritual concept in the mass consciousness, it's showing that people are ready and hungry for that deeper dive, but then we have to do the deeper dive work to fill in the gaps. And I think that's really what we do. And I think that's what really needs to be done as this planet goes from spiritual concept to spiritual embodiment.
Speaking of spiritual concepts to spiritual embodiment, Matt, you have 3 books currently. Yes. And I was struck when I looked at the titles, because I don't think I was familiar. I remember when Whatever Arises came out.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Everything Is Here to Help You, but I didn't know your latest book is called The Universe Always Has a Plan.
Yeah.
So I just want to read your 3 book titles. Whatever Arises, love that. Everything Is Here to Help You. The Universe Always Has a Plan. I thought, well, that could be one time. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, I was like, wow, there is a very definite energetic signature and theme here. I was curious, because I know your books have been very celebrated and enjoyed by people. What is your process around creating and writing a book? How does it work for you?
So interesting. So the first funny behind the scenes joke about my books, I write every single word. And I've been blessed with editors who respect my process as a channel. And so if they want to edit something, they may make a suggestion, but every change is made in my own words. So like I write every single thing. And I love that I've had the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's because when I write, there's an energy. And if you sometimes edit things too properly grammatically, it can change the energy. Yeah. So I've been blessed to be able to have that. But the joke is, every book I've published, I've gone to the publisher like, here's the book and here's what we're going to call it. And I've always had a tendency to come up with these like fluffy titles. Mm-hmm. And they go, we're going to call it this. I have never named a single book I've written. I've written every word, but the publisher always comes up with an alternate title and they want to go with it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a good title. And so that's
were these 3 different publishers, these 3 different books?
First one, Whatever Rises, love that, was Sounds True.
Sounds True, yeah.
Next 2 are Hay House.
Ah, okay, because they kind of all fit with each other. So I was
I know,
like,
wow,
that's
funny.
Impressive. Yeah.
So it's just this funny joke of like, and I'm currently writing my 4th book, and it's going to be with Sounds True.
Great. So what do you want that book to be called, Matt? And then tell us what it is called.
Yeah. Well, so far right now I'm just writing it, but what I want it to be called is How to Hold Space. And the subtitle is Embracing Ourselves and Others from the Heart of Compassion. And it's a book where I teach from 3 different perspectives: how to hold space for your journey, how to hold space in relationship, and how to hold space for our awakening, emerging society and culture.
Nice.
And I think for the times we're in, I think this is just, and it's coming through so passionately. It's, it's my 4th book. It's the best thing I've ever written. But as far as my process goes, and you asked about that, when I first started writing and channeling many years ago, before I was published, I thought I could just sit down and channel a book. And what I realized, even though I'm a channel, is you have to learn how to write an outline. Yeah. So what I developed the ability to do is so when it's time for me to write a book, I start getting ideas. For me, a title drops in and a title grabs me. I have to kind of think about it and I go, okay, does this have enough energy for a book? Is this just a very provocative blog? Is this something that if I'm interviewed for a year, is this going to excite me to talk about, right? I have to kind of go through a process. Is this a course? Like is this a 2-hour soul gathering I'm going to do and put on YouTube? And so if it has enough juice, I then start channeling an outline, and I can sit down and literally write an outline off the top of my head. And as I'm doing it, I'm organizing. And that's the base of how I write. And I'm going to add things in there, but I'm just going to follow this outline. And it's just going to be like themes and whatever. And it's very, very general, but then I go from my outline and I just start going. And my actual process is when I'm writing a book, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll write for a couple hours. And then I'll stop, take a break, go to lunch, take a walk, whatever, work out. When I come back, I edit what I wrote that morning. I go over and I edit it. And then the next morning I move on. And I do that process and I actually can get a first draft out in about a month and a half.
Wow, that's quick.
It's quick. And I'm not trying to do it quick. It's just, it pours through me when it's time.
Mm.
And then I'll go back over it again just to make sure, words weren't misspelled or, for me, one of the hardest things as a channel is I always mix up the syntax.
Mm-hmm.
Starts as an I, ends as a we, and I have to kind of just pick my lane. Like what am I going to go with? And so I do that, and then I get it off to whatever publisher I'm working with, and they look at it. And the last book I wrote, Universe Always Has a Plan. I wrote that in a month. I was going through a very tough time in my life, and so I just kind of buried myself in writing a book, and I wrote it in about a month. And I think there were like 5 to 7 edits of the entire book. I mean, it was. I don't know how that even happened, but for me as a writer, which when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an author. I thought I was going to write children's books, maybe poetry, but didn't realize I was going to do what I'm doing. So I identify with being a writer, an author. Like for me, writing and publishing a book is like, it's a thing for me. So, having the outline and then just kind of just having that very interesting organization to write from, allows what comes through me to just blossom. And there's always unexpected things that come through me that I never had planned. But the outline just helps me organize it in a way where it's coherent and cogent and, trackable. And, and it also helps me understand what am I really going to be teaching? Where's the beginning? Where's the middle? Where's the end? So I to all aspiring writers who are watching this, as much as we just want to bring it through, and we could sometimes feel like, oh my God, this is the best thing the world's ever heard. This is the voice of God. There has to be that part of us that has to say, and we can afford to organize our time. We can ground ourselves, and it's okay to kind of learn a form that allows the true gift to really flower and blossom.
Chop wood, carry water. I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that I occasionally steer very visionary creatives away from is the kind of euphoric dream of creativity. I remember years and years ago, like 20 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop dreaming about what I was going to do. And then these days, I'm just, I still have the dream moments, but there's the doing, and without the doing energy, we can't really ground and birth these things into form. And it's something that's really important to understand, because it also, I think it affects you very emotionally. Mm-hmm. So people are like, well, I don't know if I'll like that. And I'm like, well, then you have to try it. And they go, well, what if I don't like it? Well, let's find out. Try it, run it through your body, do it for a week, and then let's make an assessment based on actual reality rather than your potential idea of what your mind thinks may or may not happen.
Sure.
And I noticed that can be a real block. And I think it's because of potential trauma in the body and whatever it is that we're worried we're going to unearth when we go in there. But it's a really important one for wannabe creatives or creatives who are stuck on the starting blocks and not yet push themselves into the swamp of it all to kind of see what's in there.
I totally agree. And I think that, I think one of the biggest misconceptions I know when I work with people and what I hear constantly is when I figure out the thing I'm really good at, it's going to be easy and not hard. And what I have found is that what your true passion is what you're willing to work hard at. So I would rewrite a book 3 times over and over again if it meant getting it to the level of what I'm satisfied with. Like I love working hard in so many ways. Like even when I work out in the gym, like, I used to be a bodybuilder when I was a kid, and I'm getting back into it. Like just to have an area where I can work hard at is actually for me a pleasure.
Mm.
So for me, I find that, there's no talent we're going to have where there's not hard work. You just have to find something that you enjoy so much that you would want to work hard at it. I remember like when I first came into this industry and I was talking to a potential publisher about my book, and I was talking, it was so funny because this person actually helped me grow in a split second. And the first moment of the question they asked me, I took it the wrong way. I thought they were insane. I'm like, this person's never done it. Is this person even spiritual? Because I was pitching, here's the book I want to write, and it's going to be about this. And they looked at me and they said, why is that important to anyone? Right? And I thought that I go, how dare you, sir? How dare you, sir? Sir, ma'am, all of you, sir, ma'ams in the room, how dare you even, this is the word of God. Right. You know what I mean? And I didn't in that moment get it until I went home and I started to, why is this important? What am I actually doing? What are any of us actually doing? And it actually helped me really tangibly understand the gravity of my contribution, your contribution, not in a way so I can talk about it in a very concise way, but just understanding like what is the actual value of what I'm doing. And I think that before I do a project, a book, whatever, even before I speak on stage, I often ask myself the question, okay, Matt, here's what I'm going to speak about. And oftentimes I don't even know until I get into it. Why is that important to anyone? And I answer the question, and it allows me to bring through something even more compelling than if I was just in my creative laboratory coming up with ideas. Why is this important to anyone? And I'm so glad the person asked me the question, because it just helps me kind of ground my energy and focus it in a way where it, because I want to be effective in people's lives. I want to actually help. So I think, for all of us who are creating, whether we're creating a book or they're meant to do this, I think a lot of times people focus on, I want to be good at something and I want to be recognized for what's within me. Instead of the passion of, here's what I want to do, here's who I want to affect, and whatever needs to come through me to serve other people, so be it.
And the key there is the other people. It's like, if you want to share anything with the world, creativity or a project, you have to be thinking of the other people. However, like you said, it's quite common that our wounds, we're often trying to serve by what we're doing in the world. It's no different to when you meet someone in conversation and they'll spend 20 minutes talking at you without really checking whether they've got your attention or your focus. And you're sitting there going, I don't know why they're monologuing this at me. They're not really like with me. They're not really checking, is this the right, they're not, if they were looking at me, they might see I'm a little confused as to why this is all coming out. And you do see that kind of, it's like a maturity moment as a creative, where you go beyond needing to be seen and heard,
right,
and wanting to help others see and hear themselves through what you're offering them as much as your compulsion to do it.
Absolutely. I used to be, and I'm just outing myself just because it's funny about the conversation. I used to, in my personal life, when I really couldn't trust what came through me, like I couldn't believe that I was doing what I was doing. I was the king of the Shakespearean monologue, where I might as well be holding a skull and just doing a Hamlet monologue, because I'm just bringing through what I bring through. And I start talking about one thing, and then all of a sudden it's a Pink Floyd concert. Everyone's tripping on the acid I'm channeling. And, I had to learn over the years, I had to learn to see and validate myself, and learning that when I'm in the presence of other people, my true joy is seeing them, and I think for me, one of the real gifts of being successful was being successful for me is about serving people and serving their journey. And so for me, being successful got me over myself pretty quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And,
Service does that.
and I was going to ask you, because, you asked me the question about my process, and I know you also are writing books and doing things. What do you notice about your process now different than when you started?
It's a weird metaphor maybe, but
Mm,
I'm not a parent in this lifetime, and I have many friends and family members who became parents in this lifetime, and
yeah.
there was stark contrast when they became parents as to my experience of them. So it's
Mm,
like they're your friends, they're your brother and sister, and you're in this relationship with them.
yeah.
And as soon as they become parents, you in that relationship now are that much to them,
Mm,
understandably, because they have this world they are serving and that they are in, and they don't necessarily have the luxury of time they used to have.
yeah.
So I think that's the biggest difference. Like, I now am a parent
Yeah.
to this work. Whereas when I started this work, I was like a teenager in an early 20s. And I was kind of, I was like, oh, good. Oh, that pleased someone. Oh, I might do that again in 3 months' time.
Right.
No, there's not. I'm a parent. So there's 8 different things that we have. And I'm lucky that the team I work with, and that's how I like it. I like to work with empowered creatives and leaders.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I sit at the head of the team, but everybody is doing their own department. And yeah, we're busy in a good way, So I think that the difference is the luxury of time, navel gazing, reflection. And also, I think I got my spiritual process out the way in those early years in
Yeah.
terms of not dissimilar to you, the big awakenings. They
Yeah.
really happened that kind of first 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
of my work as a public channeler. And now I'll get doses of them
Yeah.
and they'll come along every now and then. But I kind of got grounded in who I was over the years. So, all I would say is that doing this work has matured me in ways that I'm really grateful for. That if I look at myself 12, 14 years ago, I was not in possession of.
And, it's so funny you say that, because I can totally relate. When I first started, and, my metaphor would be, because when I was a young 15-year-old, my greatest self-esteem was, oh my God, I'm dating a very attractive young lady, and that makes me feel like I'm $1,000,000 when I was a kid.
Right. Right.
So when I first started doing this work, the work was like, I get to date the prettiest girl I've ever met in my life. And
Uh-huh.
it was validating. It was beautiful. And now the work, and I love what you said, the metaphor of, I'm now the parent. The work is my child. I'm the supervision. I'm the, things come through me all the time, that whether it's a teaching, a book, I have my next 3 books already outlined, like, or a joke that maybe I'll do on stage one day, but I'm the parent. I'm the one that goes, I don't know about that, or maybe, or, and it's instead of being validated by the popularity or even validated by the work I do to help other people, which is very pleasing to me, I'm validated by my relationship with my work. I'm validated by the maturity I hold in the work that I do. I'm validated by being fulfilled to be of service without being inflated by the identity of how people perceive me.
Mm.
And something I do that's very funny. Is, I spend a lot of time alone. I have a great intimate circle of friends. But what I do regularly, and I like to cook. So like one night I'll cook myself like whatever favorite meal I'm craving. And, I'll kind of make it a healthier version. And I'll cook myself a magnificent meal. I'll watch one of my favorite, movies, and I call it Matt Kahn Appreciation Night. And I have Matt Kahn Appreciation Night, where it's a night for Matt Kahn to honor Matt Kahn.
That's great.
And it's such, you said earlier, the little things in life, right? Those are the little things that really matter most. Like for me, I go to the store and I'll buy a random ingredient, and it's like I'm on a Food Network show. Okay, make a dish, feature that. Like I bought trail mix, and I, took it home, and I thought, oh, what if I turned that into a pesto? Right. So I did, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, like, I don't know, just doing the work, but still having creative joy and play, and still having this mature relationship, like you spoke about so eloquently with your work, to not be like a kid. Yeah, I finally am seen and heard, but I'm the parent to my work. And the relationship, the mature relationship is what fulfills me. I think that's something that doesn't always get talked about. And I think it's a really beautiful thing that you reflected.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing about Matt Kahn Appreciation Night. Although I was just thinking that for me, it wouldn't be a Lee Harris Appreciation Night.
Yeah.
In my case, it would be a restaurant appreciation night, because the one thing I can't quite bring myself to do, which I often wish I did, was cook. I know if I did, I could, and but I'm full of admiration for all the people in my life who cook well. Mm-hmm. I always tell myself, one day when I'm not so busy doing all these things and I've got too much time on my hands, I will get these recipe books out and figure that out. So it might be restaurant appreciation night for me, but I love it.
Look, I love restaurants, and I do cook a lot, and I study recipes in different cuisines from different cultures, and then I kind of just learn combinations and do my own thing. I have spiritual books I'm writing, but I'm probably going to come out with a cookbook in the next couple of years. And I was
just going to say the Matt Kahn restaurant, I've already decided that when I get to meet you in person, I'm coming to your house, or I'm going to show you where the kitchen is in my house. One of the two, because this is too exciting. I love being cooked for. So
honestly, it would be my greatest pleasure. It's one of the greatest thrills to cook for people. My friends come over. I do 3 and 5 course tasting menus. And, if anyone has an allergy, I just need, it's no big deal. Like,
oh, good.
You want to do vegan, you want to do whatever. Like, it's just, for me, it's the greatest joy to cook for people. I've thought about doing cooking videos.
You should.
And I really want to do that. I really do. Yeah. So it's all timing, and but I want to do cookbooks, and because I'm really passionate about food and ingredients, and I'm passionate about it as a mindful expression of consciousness and feeding ourselves and loving ourselves. And for me, I don't know, like when I cook myself a meal, and I live by myself, I'm single.
Yeah.
How I played it. And by the way, I don't know how I do what I do when I cook, because I'm not trying to be like, I'm going to do a chefy swirl and swoosh thing. But for some reason, that's what comes through me. And it's, and then when I do it, I sit back with my meal, like I do with my teachings, and I go, okay, what could I have done differently there? Oh, I know why that turned out like that. It was that little thing. And so I'm always studying what I do, because for me, it's not about trying to be great at something. The process of getting better at anything is the thrill ride.
Oh, Matt, you've just reminded me that all I need to do is go into the kitchen and put
some man.
I know. It's you've just given me even more fuel for the little voice in my head that goes, Lee, why don't you just make the time for cooking? So I'm gonna work on that. But honestly, it really is. We have a good friend, Barbie, and she just came to visit us a few weeks ago, and my God, I mean, just watching her in the kitchen, it's one of my great joy, like watching someone who knows how to pull a meal together. I'm so full of admiration for it. So yes, do the cooking videos. Please do some for beginners like me.
I will.
Though, I know how to cook some things, but I think when this work came into my life, so much of my creative energy went into the work. So I will watch your videos and wrestle some cooking energy back for myself.
I love it. Well, and for me, cooking is like how I can I'm never taking a break from spirit, but just I take a break from the identity of, the work I do. And so it's very beautiful. I will say this as far as cooking. I'll say the 2 biggest things that I've learned as a self-taught cook that I think is the most key thing. So if you're following a recipe and you look at a recipe, it has all the ingredients measured out. It has everything measured out. So before you start cooking, all of that should be measured out first. Because if not, you're going to hurry and try to measure things. Your pan's hot. It's going to be too hot. You're going to burn something. So first thing is everything has to be laid out. It's just kind of, even if you're just improving.
Book writing, you're doing a full circle back to your book writing.
Exactly.
Please continue.
And the other thing is you don't need to move quickly in the kitchen. I mean, usually if you're on a cooking competition on TV, you have 30 minutes. But if you're at home, it's not about moving fast, but you're always in motion. So if I put something in the oven and that has 20 minutes to cook, and if there's anything else I don't need to prep, I turn and I start washing dishes. So I'm always in motion. It's a very Zen thing. So everything measured out first, always in motion, checking things, tasting things, just kind of, it's really a practice of mindfulness and just being connected. And when I started cooking, I was very afraid of knives and cutting myself. And so I trained myself on ceramic dull knives. And I did these weird practices where I would fold paper towels and cut things. And I would see if I could cut without cutting the paper so I could feel and I learned to trust knives because I was so afraid of fire. I was so afraid of knives. And, I grew up as a sensitive kid, afraid of everything, including myself, and, convinced definitely I'm the Antichrist for sure, and so I just kind of overcame these fears. And when I learned how to cook to the point where I can go into the grocery store, and if I'm craving something, I could literally go buy things, go home and do it. Maybe look up a little recipe for a little reference, what temperature, how long, but you just start to get it. And when it gets inside of you, the feeling of accomplishment of, I feel like eating this right now, and you do it.
So a week ago, I bought a cookbook because my friend Barbie said, oh, get the Barefoot Contessa. She's a great one to start with.
Yeah.
And now, Matt, we have somehow gone from talking about our work to a 10-minute morale booster for me about cooking. So I thank you to everyone who tuned in and was willing to watch me get mentored by Matt about cooking. I feel very thoroughly like I now have to go home and do something. So that's good, Matt. Thank you.
This is so great. And I think, and does your partner, your husband, does he?
So Stephen does more cooking than I do for sure. Yeah. Neither of us are like dying to run to the kitchen. And it's funny when you described your process around cooking, that's how I experience my work. So it's like there are multiple projects. Now it's music, now it's this, now it's admin, now, so I totally get that piece.
And when you said earlier a music CD, as part of what's coming through, are you a singer or do you do musical instruments?
Oh. Yeah. So myself, so I'm a singer-songwriter and I work with Davor Bozic, who we've been working together for 8 years.
Yeah.
So he scores all of the music that comes through Lee Harris Energy. And I have collaborated with a few other people like Barry Goldstein, who I know is a friend of yours too. Yeah. So who's wonderful. So so music creation is one of my things.
So here's another funny little joke. I like to write songs. I don't like to sing. That's not my thing. But one of my secret passions is I like to write songs. I haven't written a song in a long time. But my thing would be like, I would love to write for other people. Because like for me on stage, I do what I do. That's my performance.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a singer. That's just not my thing. Like if you have a concert, let me cater it. I'd be happy to cook for people, but I like writing songs and telling stories. And then the idea of like, oh, who would this be good for? Ooh, this, I just love that. I love that. And I can't wait to hear your CD and I can't wait to hear. So what kind of genre would you say of if there was one?
Yeah, so we categorize this as new age because it's the right genre, but it's really a fusion. So it's kind of like imagine singer-songwriter music combined with world instruments and performers, and we've tuned this album to 528 hertz.
I love that.
So it's a real blend. There's a couple of the songs are already out, but I will definitely send you the link to the album.
Please do. I love that. I'm a huge music fan. I have a Shazam app on my phone, and
Shazam is great.
So I Shazam everything at restaurants.
Oh yeah, me too.
And then instantly,
what is that?
Add it to the mix. Boom.
Yeah,
and I have found like such great singers. Like there's a singer named Jetta, Jetta, or Rain, Raign.
Okay.
These two singers, like I'm listening to this going, why did Shazam introduce me to them? Like, how have I never known about this? And so I am constantly searching for music, and then I listen to music while I listen to vinyl while I'm cooking, and just again, for me, like this weekend in Bend, like it's supposed to like snow, and so I'm like, I'm gonna stay home, I'm gonna listen to music, I'm gonna cook. Like I will literally cook small plates for myself all day. And
thank God we don't know where you live, man. Because I'm telling you, there's your house just seems like a veritable restaurant to walk into.
It honestly is.
Thank God we don't all know where your address is right now. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of us at your front door this weekend.
And by the way, so I had heard, and you live in the Malibu area, right?
We live in Malibu, yeah.
Okay, so there, and I used to spend time in Malibu, I forgot this place. I used to always go there and get a breakfast burrito. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it's by Café de la Plage.
That's right. Which I used to get a latte there too.
Yeah. Great. I had one of those today. I forget the name. I've never had one, but everybody talks about these breakfast burritos.
Honest to God.
Okay.
Get a breakfast burrito and then get a latte. When I got my latte there, I was standing behind Rick Rubin, who was the producer of the Beastie Boys.
He's often in Café de la Plage.
And
I've seen him multiple times. Yeah.
Became a little boy, didn't say anything to him, was just, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is Rick Rubin. Oh my God. So anyway, get a breakfast burrito.
Okay, I will do it. I will do it.
Yeah, I love it.
This has been lovely. We're gonna draw our conversation to a close, even though we could keep speaking for a long time, I feel, but it's been really lovely to meet you. And thank you for coming on the show. And I am looking forward to your cooking at some point in the near future.
I would love to. It's an honor.
Thanks so much for being here, Matt. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And if you would like to connect more with Matt's work, you can visit him at mattkahn.org. And as ever, we will put all links in the show notes underneath this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Impact the World. Rebirth has been an annual transformation program that I and my team offer every January for the last 4 years. This year, Rebirth 2021 will be quite different to prior years because 2020 was very different to prior years in general as a whole for all of us. So a couple of things came to me for Rebirth 2021. I wanted to deliver all of the modules live. Prior years, we have done a lot of pre-recorded material, but this year, everything will be delivered live, and then there will be full replays available within 24 hours of the live broadcast. My guides, the Z's, are going to be a huge part of this year's Rebirth. We held transmissions in August, and it was an incredible experience, and it was allowing my guides to bring through the next level of information. And one of the themes that they have talked about for 2021 and beyond is us becoming more creators of our lives. They're talking about how we create our lives every day through our energy, and also how we can take different actions to animate our sense of purpose, our sense of connection to life, but also the life and the world that we're creating right now, and how important that is in the years to come. So Rebirth 2021 will have that focus as its main theme, next level creation. And then across each broadcast, we're going to look at creating from a metaphysical and a grounded standpoint. Stephen Washington will again be bringing his work to Rebirth. So there will be a module called Activating Your Creative Body. And as soon as you sign up, you will receive the channeled audio MP3 and sound healing, which is called Creating Through Chaos and Being Here for Love. We can't wait to get started with you. The program begins on January 19th, and you will have lifetime access to the material once we have finished on January 29th. So if you're looking for a rebirth or to up-level your way of creating in your life, we would love to have you join us for Rebirth 2021. You can visit rebirth2021.com or my website, leeharrisenergy.com, for all the details.